It's a Valentine EX Turk channel, and this is another Final Fantasy, discussion, primarily with the Final Fantasy VII Remake. First of all, this subject is, who is Genesis and why would he play a perfect role into some of the backstory. If you haven't played Crisis Core, my recommendation on games is Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. So, I recommend that highly, before you get into this video. Because then you'll understand why this character is important. Now, I think if they do put the scenes like they say that Square Enix say they're going to put back the scenes that, put the extra scenes with Genesis and Sephiroth like they say they're going to do. This would be perfect because, if anything, it was actually Genesis that pushed the plot along, besides Hojo, and besides Shinra, and besides all the other stuff that's been going on in the Crisis Core game. He's also pushed the plot. And also seen at the end of Dirge of Cerberus with the catchphrase and the catch line, "Brother, we've got some work to do," which led to a bunch of fan novels, fan fiction, and fan-made novels to what would happen after Dirge of Cerberus with Genesis' return. So I think this will play a good role into the story because, again, because like in my last video, because of his push to make Sephiroth, do the Nibelheim burning, that one push he said, I think it's perfect if they inserted, now they can't insert Angeal, which I understand, but if they inserted Genesis in some way or some fashion, besides the cutscenes, like if there's like Shinra files inside the Shinra Manor in the remake that, backs up what happened in Crisis Core, that'd be pretty perfect. I think Genesis is a perfect role for pushing the story along, so I think it's good that they're including him in the remake, because then it fills in the holes the story had before, because before the completion to Final Fantasy VII, before the completion to Final Fantasy VII, the story really didn't make all that much sense, There were like holes. So much holes that you'd break your shovel trying to, dig any more holes. So I'm glad that the completion of Final Fantasy VII exists, because it puts back those plot holes and gives an accurate timeline. Now, like I said, Genesis is very important because he plotted. He plotted earlier on the game. After Genesis was defeated by Zack and Crisis Core, he was taken to Deep Ground, and really became the far back leader of Deep Ground, with the face of Vice the Accumulate. But it was actually Genesis who created Deep Ground, if you really look at it. That's why at the end of Dirge of Cerberus, when you get that secret ending, Genesis says, "Brother, we've got much work to do." Meaning that Genesis is going to use the power of Rebirth to bring back Vice. Now, why is this important? Is because all the stuff that happened in Final Fantasy VII wasn't just only Hojo's doing. It was also Genesis. Genesis planned everything. Just in case he would have lost against Zack Fair in Crisis Core, he planned everything out as accordingly. Even though during Final Fantasy VII, he was in a eternal slumber inside the cave. He was in his slumber during the events of Final Fantasy VII. But because of him, Deep Ground exists, and because of him, Sephiroth turned to the dark side and burned down Nibelheim, which caused, Final Fantasy VII to really happen, because, Sephiroth coming back and Final Fantasy VII, caused the story to progress even further than just taking out Shinra. So, it was, he has a very big role into this. That's why I think it's good that Square Enix is going to probably put some cutscenes with Sephiroth and Genesis, because it puts back everything that happened. I'm guessing they're going to actually find ways to combine the cutscenes from Crisis Core game into the remake, which I like that they're doing that, because then it makes the game make a lot more sense story-wise. Even if you go back and read the fan-made novels, by N.J. Gallagher, you know, it still makes more sense that they're putting this character in, because it's because of this character all this stuff started, because it was a plan. It was a huge plan. Even though it breaks the original canon where, you know, everything was planned by Sephiroth originally. I like that they're putting this extended canon, because then there's something behind it, and which will tie all the games together. I think Genesis Rhapsodos ties all the games together, so I'm glad that they're putting this character into the cutscenes of this, and makes this, the backstory makes more sense as it goes to sequential order. So, I mean, I think that's a good idea, to be quite honest. I think he should be included in the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, for people who don't know the character Genesis Rhapsodos, my recommendations for games will be Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core on the PSP. You can even if you don't have a PSP, you can emulate it now. And Final Fantasy VII Dirge Cerberus, with collecting all the G reports inside the game, are my two recommendations for it. And also any and all N.J. Gallagher's Final Fantasy novels, 7 novels. Especially, I think he's writing one for Genesis specifically, so I'd recommend that novel and Crisis Core game and Dirge Cerberus game. Then you'll understand why Genesis makes sense into the this new extended canon to Final Fantasy VII. So I'm gonna end that video with those recommendations. Like and subscribe. You'll see that box after after all my videos. I'll put that box right after with all my social media. So may the crystal be with you, and see you guys later.